Every morning begins with a quiet deception. We open our eyes to the familiar rhythm of alarms, schedules, and digital displays that promise order, as if the ticking of a clock were a natural law carved into the fabric of the universe. But beneath this calm certainty lies an unsettling possibility. The time we trust may not be the time we were meant to follow. What if the system guiding our days was engineered, reshaped, or even imposed long after humanity first learned to watch the skies? Civilizations far older than our modern world measured time with methods that feel impossibly elegant. They tracked the slow drift of stars, the heartbeat of lunar cycles, the breath of seasons, the hidden pulse of the Earth itself. Their calendars were not just schedules, they were philosophies, maps of meaning, reflections of a cosmos they believed was alive. And yet many of these systems vanished. Some were overwritten by conquering empires, others quietly buried by institutions that favored uniformity over ancestral wisdom. We seldom question the clock on our wall because it seems neutral, objective, inevitable. But imagine discovering that what we call time was shaped by politics, rewritten by reformers, and stripped of layers of significance once held sacred. Imagine learning that ancient timekeepers may have preserved insights so disruptive that later powers tried to silence them. Across continents, ruins whisper of forgotten patterns. Stone circles, temple corridors, carved symbols, fragments of calendars that do not match the tidy one we inherited. They hint at something grander, something that once connected humanity to the rhythms of the cosmos rather than the demands of industry. So we begin with a simple but dangerous question. If our time is not the original time, then what was erased, and why? And what might we uncover when we follow those remnants back to the civilizations that refused to believe the universe ticked like a machine? Perhaps the greatest mystery is not how these systems worked, but why their disappearance feels intentional, leaving us to wonder what deeper understanding of existence once guided the human relationship with time. Across the world, fragments of forgotten calendars linger like faint echoes, woven into stones, stories, and rituals that outlived the civilizations that birthed them. A solstice beam striking the heart of a chamber, a festival timed to an ancient star, a myth repeating numbers that once aligned with the heavens. Each is a reminder that time once carried meanings far deeper than mere measurement. These remnants suggest calendars that blended astronomy with spirituality, turning the sky into scripture and the seasons into prophecy. And yet many of these systems survive only in hints, as if someone tried to erase them but failed to wipe away every trace. When we walk through abandoned temples or listen to old legends, we sense the presence of something larger, a worldview in which time shaped identity, power, and belief. Rulers rose and fell by celestial cycles, not clocks, and communities aligned their lives with cosmic rhythms now dismissed as superstition. But what if those rhythms held knowledge considered too potent, too disruptive for later empires to tolerate? These whispers invite us to follow the clues that remain, leading us toward cultures whose calendars once redefined humanity's place in the universe. Time has always been portrayed as a simple progression, a straight line measured with tools that supposedly matured alongside civilization. Yet the deeper we look into humanity's earliest calendars, the more that tidy narrative begins to unravel. The mainstream view insists that ancient societies stumbled their way into timekeeping through crude observations of sunrise and sunset. But the ruins they left behind pose a quiet challenge. If these cultures were truly primitive, why do their calendars display levels of precision that our own systems struggled to match until the modern era? Across continents, separated by oceans and millennia, early civilizations tracked celestial cycles with uncanny consistency. They observed the slow drift of equinoxes, the spiraling dance of Venus, the complex rhythms of the moon's phases. Their numbers repeat like echoes, 12, 30, 360, appearing in structures, myths, and mathematical records. Historians attribute this to coincidence or shared human pattern seeking. Yet too many patterns emerge in places that should never have influenced one another. Instead of stumbling toward order, these societies began with it. Their earliest calendars were often their best ones, as if inherited rather than invented. This contradiction sits at the heart of the puzzle. Knowledge is supposed to grow over time, not shrink. And yet here we find ancient systems that outshine the calendars that followed them. Something in the past doesn't align with the story we're told. The question is why. Long before factories demanded punctuality and clocks carved the day into obedient segments, time was not a schedule. It was a sacred language. Ancient societies believed each cycle carried meaning. The moon was not merely a measure of nights. It represented renewal. The solstice was not an astronomical event, but a hinge between worlds. Time moved in spirals, not lines, echoing birth, death, and return. To live within these cycles was to live in harmony with creation itself. But such a worldview shapes more than spirituality. It shapes power. Whoever interpreted the heavens became the guardian of cosmic order. Priests, astronomer kings, and secluded initiates translated celestial rhythms into laws, rituals, and identity. This elevated time from a tool into a source of legitimacy. And anything that grants power also invites suppression. When later empires rose, they crafted calendars that served politics, not philosophy. Linear time replaced sacred cycles. Uniformity replaced regional meaning. What was once an intimate relationship between humanity and the cosmos became a standardized system designed for administration. Something profound was lost, and perhaps something dangerous was intentionally buried. Among the world's ancient civilizations, few understood time with the depth and daring of the Maya. Their calendars didn't merely measure years, they mapped reality. The Tzolk'in, a 260-day ritual cycle, interlocked with the 365-day Hab to form the calendar round. A repeating pattern that guided ceremonies, agriculture, prophecy, and identity. But it was the long count that set the Maya apart, a vast chronological engine stretching across thousands of years, marking cosmic eras with mathematical beauty. What astonished scholars was not only its sophistication but its preservation. Despite colonial campaigns that burned codices and outlawed indigenous knowledge, fragments of the Maya system survived, embedded in stone carvings and oral traditions. Even in ruins, their numbers speak. Dates etched into monuments align with astronomical events modern computers confirm. Their calculations of Venus cycles match contemporary measurements with eerie accuracy. Spanish chroniclers were unsettled by what they found. Time to the Maya was alive, a sequence of energetic phases, each carrying its own personality and influence over human affairs. To erase such a worldview, colonial powers saw no choice but to destroy the books that explained it. Yet not even fire could silence a system built into architecture and encoded across generations. The fact that their calendar endured against deliberate erasure raises a striking question. What knowledge was considered so threatening that it needed to be wiped away? Was it simply cultural resistance, or did the Maya possess a cosmology that challenged the foundations of Western time itself? For the Maya, the universe moved through vast cycles called baktuns, epochs of creation and destruction. They did not fear endings, they expected them. Each cycle marked a renewal, a cosmic turning where old worlds dissolved and new ones emerged. To them, time was not an endless forward motion but a heartbeat of creation itself. This view stands in stark contrast to our modern fear of finality, our belief that endings threaten meaning rather than complete it. The Maya tracked these cycles not out of dread but understanding. By observing celestial rhythms, eclipses, planetary movements, solar patterns, they believed they could anticipate shifts in the world's spiritual and physical balance. Their prophecy was not doom, but pattern recognition. Colonial powers rooted in linear thinking found this worldview deeply unsettling. A people who believed worlds rise and fall by cosmic design were not easily controlled. Their calendars suggested an intelligence older than their cities, perhaps inherited, perhaps discovered through centuries of skywatching. And when knowledge can redefine destiny, those in power often seek to bury it. The Maya cycles, preserved against erasure, now call us to reconsider how civilizations understand beginnings, endings, and the spaces between. Egypt's calendar seems simple at first glance, a 360-day year with 5 mysterious extra days tacked on like an afterthought. But simplicity dissolves the moment we ask why so many ancient civilizations, from the Maya to the Persians to the early Vedic world, began with the same perfect circle of 360. It is too tidy, too mathematically elegant to be dismissed as coincidence. The Egyptians described those 5 added days as stolen time, a span outside the natural order, inserted only after the gods reshaped creation. To modern scholars, these myths are symbolic. To ancient priests, they were memories. The 360-day structure aligns cleanly with celestial geometry, the degrees of a circle, the divisions of the zodiac, the harmonious proportions found in temples built millennia before mechanical clocks. Yet the Nile Valley was a place where math, myth, and cosmic observation fused into a single worldview. Their calendar may not have been inaccurate. It may have reflected an earlier system, one preserved long after the world changed around it. If so, what forces reshaped the heavens? Catastrophe? Slow astronomical drift? Or something deeper hidden in Egypt's priestly knowledge? The extra 5 days hint at a fracture between eras, a reminder of a time before time itself was rewritten. Egypt didn't invent this puzzle, they inherited it. But from whom? Every civilization depends on water, but Egypt's survival hinged on the Nile's annual flood. Predicting it meant predicting life itself. While outsiders imagined Egyptian priests as mystics, they were among the world's earliest and most precise astronomers. Their secret weapon was a star, Sirius. Its heliacal rising, a single bright moment before dawn, foretold the coming flood with uncanny accuracy. The Egyptians marked this event with reverence, seeing in it the breath of a goddess and the renewal of the world. But this knowledge was not shared freely. It was guarded within temple walls, recorded in codes and rituals that outsiders could not decipher. Whoever controlled the calendar controlled harvests, labor, festivals, and the psychological rhythm of the kingdom. Later conquerors quickly learned this truth. To rule Egypt, you had to own its time. Many tried to mimic the priests' methods but failed to grasp the deeper system linking the movements of Sirius to the cycles governing spiritual life. The secrecy was not arrogance, it was protection. The calendar was a living instrument of power, and power in the ancient world was something empires always sought to seize or suppress. Whispers of a forgotten age echo through Egypt's oldest myths. The priests spoke of Zep-Tepi, the first time, an era when gods walked the earth and taught humanity the foundations of knowledge. To modern ears, it sounds like mythology. Yet many Egyptian structures, older than dynasties, older than writing, align with celestial markers far too precisely to be dismissed as trial-and-error architecture. Some researchers propose that Egypt did not invent the 360-day calendar at all. They preserved it, Inherited knowledge often decays slowly, its original meaning fading even as its form survives. The earliest pharaohs may have possessed fragments of a timekeeping system rooted in a forgotten civilization, one disrupted by catastrophe or absorbed into later cultures. Mainstream scholars resist the idea because it implies a historical lineage far deeper than textbooks allow. But Egypt has always been a land where the past refuses to lie still. Long before written calendars spread across Europe, the windswept landscapes of the British Isles held time in stone. Stonehenge, Avebury, Callanish, each appears to modern eyes as a ring of weathered pillars. But beneath their silence lies celestial intelligence. These circles were not temples, not graves, but instruments, massive, enduring devices calibrated to the turning of the sky. Their alignments capture solstices with exactness rivaling modern observatories. They track lunar standstills, rare events occurring only once every 18.6 years. They stand as evidence that the ancient world understood long cycles we rarely acknowledge today. Roman chroniclers feared the Druids, describing them as philosophers with dangerous knowledge. That danger was not sorcery, it was their understanding of time. The Druids could predict seasonal shifts, lunar rhythms, and ritual windows with a precision Rome could not easily replicate. Knowledge like this strengthens identity, and identity fuels resistance. Thus, when Rome conquered Celtic lands, the first targets were the knowledge keepers. The stone circles could not be burned like books. They could only be abandoned, misunderstood, or deliberately rewritten in the historical record. And so they were. Yet they still stand, holding the sky exactly as their builders intended, whispering of a time system that once bound humanity to the cosmic wheel. When the Druids vanished, their knowledge should have vanished with them. Instead, it dissolved into stories, festivals timed to forgotten solstice rituals, songs that preserved ancient numerical patterns, folklore carrying echoes of a calendar once spoken but never written. Samhain, Beltane, Imbolc, Lughnasadh. 4 Celtic festivals dividing the year into luminous halves and shadowed quarters. They align not with the Gregorian calendar but with celestial thresholds, the deeper rhythm of the earth breathing through the seasons. Oral cultures often embed knowledge where conquerors least expect it. A story repeated across centuries may carry codes older than its words. A children's rhyme may mirror a lunar cycle. A legend about a hero's journey may map the sun's path across the sky. The Celts hid their calendar not in temples but in memory. Later rulers dismissed these tales as superstition, unaware that they were dismantling the last architecture of a forbidden time system. Yet something persisted. Even today, millions celebrate festivals whose purpose they no longer fully understand, unknowingly honoring a calendar that outlived empire, fire, and conquest. In ancient China, time was more than a measurement. It was a mandate, a divine permission to rule. Dynasties rose and fell not merely through conquest, but through their ability to predict the rhythms of the heavens. If an emperor's astronomers failed to foresee eclipses or drifting seasons, the people believed the ruler had lost the mandate of heaven, the sacred legitimacy tying mortal governance to cosmic order. Thus, controlling time meant controlling destiny. It was no coincidence that Chinese courts guarded their astronomers with the same vigilance reserved for military strategists. The Chinese lunisolar calendar grew into one of humanity's most refined systems, merging the moon's monthly dance with the sun's yearly path. Its intercalary months, intricate zodiac cycles, and precise eclipse predictions reveal a civilization obsessed with synchronization, aligning earthly life with celestial mechanics. Yet much of this knowledge remained hidden behind palace gates, restricted to elite scholars whose work shaped the spiritual and political heartbeat of the realm. When dynasties shifted, calendar reforms followed, not because the sky had changed, but because power demanded a new reckoning of time. Each ruling house attempted to inscribe its identity into the heavens, rewriting the calendar to affirm its cosmic authority. But beneath these revisions lay something constant, a belief that time itself was a dialogue between humankind and the universe, one that only the most learned were allowed to interpret. Long before Europe constructed mechanical clocks, Chinese engineers were building devices that charted the sky with astonishing sophistication. Armillary spheres rotated like bronze universes, their rings tracing the paths of equinoxes, solstices, and planetary wanderings. Water-driven clock towers measured time not by sand or candles, but by controlled hydraulic power, a technology so advanced it would not reappear in the West for nearly 1,000 years. These instruments belonged not to the public but to the imperial court. Their purpose was quiet, deliberate, and political, to maintain mastery over cosmic order. With them, astronomers forecast eclipses and celestial anomalies, events that common people interpreted as omens. By predicting these omens before they occurred, the emperor demonstrated his harmony with heaven. Knowledge became spectacle, accuracy became power. Yet fragments of these machines suggest an even older lineage. Some designs appear too mature for a first attempt, as if based on prototypes lost to time or deliberately concealed. Their precision raises a question few historians dare ask. Did ancient sky watchers inherit mechanical principles from an earlier scientific tradition, one erased by wars, floods, or dynastic purges? The silence of history offers no easy answers, only the lingering sense that China's celestial technologies were part of a much deeper legacy. In ancient Persia, time was not merely cyclical, it was a battlefield. Zoroastrianism envisioned the universe as a cosmic struggle between light and darkness, each age shaped by the shifting balance of these forces. Their calendar reflected this philosophy, dividing existence into vast epochs called millennia, each governed by celestial guardians. These were not simple mythological embellishments. They formed a framework that guided agriculture, ritual, prophecy, and governance. Fire temples maintained perpetual flames, symbolizing the order of the cosmos. Priests interpreted celestial signs, believing that the stars revealed the moral arc of history. In this worldview, time was a living prophecy, unfolding toward an ultimate reconciliation of creation. To understand time was to understand destiny, and to manipulate its cycles was to influence the fate of kingdoms. Persia's conquerors recognized the power embedded in this system. Each sought to reshape or suppress the Zoroastrian calendar, fearing that a worldview anchored in cosmic justice could inspire resistance. But the deeper secret lay in the numbers themselves. Certain time cycles, those tied to planetary conjunctions and long-count ages, mirror patterns found in far older Mesopotamian traditions. This suggests a shared heritage, a calendrical ancestry stretching back further than recorded history. Persia did not invent these cosmic ages, they refined and ritualized them, preserving a wisdom others tried to extinguish. Sumer is the oldest known civilization and, paradoxically, one of the most advanced. Their sexagesimal base 60 mathematics appears suddenly, fully formed, with no developmental stages beneath it. Their lunar calendars tracked months with a precision that aligns closely with modern astronomical calculations. Their star lists recorded celestial bodies with accuracy impossible for a culture supposedly at the dawn of time. Mainstream history explains this as ingenuity, the rapid evolution of early city-states. But the deeper we examine their records, the more the narrative strains. Why did their earliest tablets display such advanced mathematical structures? Why did their myths describe a time before the flood when rulers lived for thousands of years? Numbers that align with astronomical cycles, not human lifespans. Why did they carve the motions of Venus into clay long before telescopes existed? Sumerian scholars mapped the heavens with a confidence suggesting inheritance rather than innovation. Their knowledge feels like a remnant of something earlier, a legacy carried forward after an upheaval erased its original context. This is the Sumerian problem. A civilization at the beginning of written history somehow possessed understanding that should have taken thousands of years to develop. Historians avoid confronting the implications, but the evidence remains. The Sumerians did not begin in darkness. They began with a spark already burning, hinting that humanity's earliest calendars may trace back to an age lost in silence, a chapter of time rewritten or forgotten. Every empire rewrites the world it conquers, but few realize the most powerful edits occur not in monuments or borders, but in calendars. Time, after all, governs identity. It dictates when people gather, what they celebrate, and how they interpret the rhythm of existence. For an invading power, allowing a conquered people to keep their calendar was allowing them to keep their worldview. Thus began a global struggle historians seldom mention: the calendar wars. Rome recognized this early. As its legions advanced into Celtic lands, it encountered communities whose entire spiritual and political lives revolved around lunar rhythms. Destroying Druidic authority required more than swords. It required dismantling the time system that shaped Celtic life. Festivals were renamed, seasonal dates shifted, and local cycles replaced with Roman ones. The people were not only conquered geographically but temporally. Later, the Christian Church continued this strategy, replacing solstice rituals with new holy days and recasting astronomical observations as superstition. Indigenous cultures across the world faced similar suppression. Colonial forces understood that erasing timekeeping traditions disrupted continuity, leaving communities unmoored from ancestral memory. These acts were not accidental. To overwrite a calendar is to rewrite reality. By severing cultures from their celestial rhythms, empires weakened the spiritual scaffolding that held them together. The remnants of these conflicts survive in odd festival dates, misaligned seasons, and fragmented myths, evidence of a silent war waged not with armies but with the structure of time itself. We assume our modern Gregorian calendar is neutral, scientific, and universal. Yet it is a patchwork of political compromises, religious strategies, and forgotten reforms layered atop one another like geological strata. Months with uneven lengths, leap years that strain logic, and weak structures with ancient religious roots reveal a system shaped by centuries of negotiation rather than pure astronomy. Julius Caesar attempted to standardize time with the Julian calendar, but even his version drifted. Medieval scholars corrected it again. Popes refined it. Kingdoms adopted it slowly, sometimes resisting for decades because changing the calendar meant changing everything, from planting cycles to tax dates to sacred rituals. Even today, global time zones twist unnaturally around borders, reflecting political convenience over cosmic order. What is most striking is how thoroughly these changes erased earlier systems. Once great calendars disappeared, leaving behind only traces in myths and monuments. Our modern world inherited not the most accurate system, but the most politically successful one. It raises an unsettling thought. If time itself has been edited repeatedly, how much of the ancient world's temporal knowledge lies buried beneath these revisions? And what would our lives look like if humanity still followed the rhythms encoded in the sky rather than the structure imposed by history's most dominant powers? Among researchers who challenge conventional timelines, a provocative idea keeps resurfacing: that civilizations across the ancient world may have inherited or rediscovered a unified timekeeping system originating from a far older source. This theory is not built on fantasies, but on recurring mathematical fingerprints. The same numbers, 12, 30, 72, 108, 360, appear in structures, myths, and calendars separated by oceans and millennia. Mainstream scholars attribute this to coincidence or convergent thinking, but the pattern is too global, too consistent, and too ancient to dismiss easily. The hypothesis suggests that before recorded history, a culture or network of cultures mapped the heavens with precision, developing a cosmological system that encoded astronomical cycles into symbolic numbers. As civilizations rose and fell, fragments of this system diffused into their calendars. The Maya expressed it through Bach tunes, the Egyptians through their 360-day year, the Chinese through their zodiacal harmonies, and the Sumerians through sexagesimal mathematics. If true, this changes everything. It implies a world where knowledge flowed not from isolated river valleys, but from a deeper, older source. A vanished age of skywatchers whose insights seeped into the foundations of later societies. Empires may have erased the memory of that age, but they could not erase the mathematical signatures embedded in sacred architecture and ritual tradition. Such ideas remain controversial because they blur the boundary between history and possibility. They challenge the belief that complexity always evolves upward rather than surviving downward from an earlier peak. Yet the evidence persists, inviting us to consider that humanity's earliest calendars might be the faint remnants of a global system of cosmic understanding, one we have only begun to piece together again. Many myths speak of a time before time, a golden age shattered by catastrophe. Flood narratives, fire cycles, cosmic battles, and sudden shifts in the heavens appear in traditions from the Andes to Mesopotamia. These stories could be symbolic, or they could be memories. Some researchers argue that Earth experienced dramatic natural events at the end of the last ice age. Impacts, rapid sea level rise, and climate disruption so severe it could have reset the world's timekeeping systems. If Earth's rotation changed even slightly, ancient calendars based on older rhythms would suddenly become inaccurate. Civilizations, forced to rebuild, might cling to fragments of the old system, unaware that the celestial mechanics had shifted. This could explain why so many cultures remember a perfect 360-day year, disrupted by a cosmic event that added irregular days to the calendar. Mainstream science hesitates to link mythology with geology, yet correlations are difficult to ignore. Ancient people recorded what they witnessed in the language they understood: myth, ritual, and number. Their stories may hold clues to cycles of destruction and rebirth that shape the calendars we have inherited. If cataclysm reset humanity's clocks once, could it happen again? Even when calendars vanish, something lingers. Rituals persist long after their purpose fades. Festivals continue even when their astronomical roots are forgotten. Architecture holds alignments no one alive can explain. Human beings seem determined to preserve time, not the mechanical version we follow today, but the deeper rhythm that once connected us to the cosmos. Across cultures, we find seasonal rites that occur on almost the exact days ancient calendars once marked. We find myths retold in fragments, preserving numerical codes and stories that should be purely symbolic. It is as if humanity refuses to let go of a truth buried beneath centuries of revision. Perhaps this persistence reveals something profound: that time is not simply a tool for organization, but a bridge between past and future, between humanity and the universe. When a calendar is erased, people recreate it unconsciously through tradition. When monuments crumble, their shadows still fall on solstice dawns. When empires rewrite time, the old rhythms survive in music, ritual, and memory. This endurance hints that timekeeping was once a sacred art, an ancestral inheritance we are only beginning to rediscover. The fragments call to us, urging us to remember a connection modern life has nearly severed, a reminder that time is more than numbers. It is identity. Our calendar feels permanent, but so did every system before it. As science accelerates and the Earth continues to shift, axis wobble, orbital drift, climate anomalies, we may one day face the need for another global recalibration. If that moment arrives, what will we choose? A calendar rooted solely in efficiency, or one that reconnects humanity to celestial rhythms long abandoned? The deeper question is whether we are repeating a pattern. Civilizations before us revised time when faced with upheaval. We may be approaching a similar threshold, a moment when the universe nudges us to reconsider our place within it. If our ancestors once followed a cosmic calendar now forgotten, perhaps we are being invited to rediscover the wisdom they tried to preserve. Time has been rewritten many times. One day we may rewrite it again. The choice will reveal not just how we measure our days, but how we understand ourselves.